In the heart of the bustling city, where skyscrapers kissed the sky and the streets buzzed with life, anonymity was the norm. People rushed about their business, seldom pausing to acknowledge the faces they passed. It was a world where everyone had somewhere to be, something to do, and little time for anything else. John, a middle-aged man with a stern expression, navigated the crowded sidewalks with a brisk, purposeful stride. Dressed in a sharp suit, he exuded an air of authority and impatience. His phone was pressed to his ear, and his voice, though low, carried an unmistakable edge. "I don't care about your excuses," John barked into the phone. "Just get it done. I don't have time for incompetence." He ended the call abruptly, shoving the phone into his pocket with a frustrated sigh. John was known for his success in the business world, but also for his harsh treatment of those around him, especially women. His colleagues often whispered about his temper and his disdain for female employees. To John, they were merely obstacles or tools, never equals. As he continued his hurried walk, he failed to notice an elderly woman sitting on a park bench, feeding pigeons. Mrs. Thompson, with her kind eyes and gentle smile, was a familiar figure in the neighborhood. She had retired from teaching years ago but remained a beloved presence in the community. Her wisdom and kindness were well known, and she often offered advice and comfort to those who sought her out. "Good morning, Mrs. Thompson," a young mother greeted as she passed by with her child. "Good morning, dear," Mrs. Thompson replied, her voice warm and soothing. "How's little Emily today?" "She's doing well, thank you. We're just off to the playground." "That's wonderful. Enjoy your day," Mrs. Thompson said, her smile genuine and heartfelt. As the young mother and child continued on their way, Mrs. Thompson returned to feeding the pigeons, lost in her thoughts. She barely noticed John approaching until he was right in front of her. Without warning, John collided with Mrs. Thompson, causing her to drop the bag of birdseed she was holding. The contents spilled onto the ground, scattering in all directions. John, already in a foul mood, turned his ire on the elderly woman. "Watch where you're going," he shouted, his face contorted with anger. "Do you have any idea how busy I am? I don't have time for this." Mrs. Thompson looked up at him, her expression calm despite the harsh words. "I'm terribly sorry," she said softly. "I didn't see you coming." "Of course you didn't," John snapped. "You're too busy feeding these stupid birds to pay attention to anything else." A few bystanders glanced over, their curiosity piqued by the commotion. Mrs. Thompson, still composed, bent down to pick up the bag of birdseed. "There's no need to be so angry," she said gently. "It was an accident." John's anger only seemed to intensify. "You don't get to tell me how to feel," he retorted. "People like you, always getting in the way, always causing problems." Mrs. Thompson stood up slowly, her eyes meeting his. "People like me," she repeated, her voice steady. "And who might that be?" "Old women," John said with a sneer. "Useless, always needing help, always a burden." Mrs. Thompson's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, perhaps sadness, perhaps understanding. "I'm sorry you feel that way," she said. "But I assure you I'm not a burden." John scoffed, shaking his head. "You don't know anything about me," he said. "You don't know what I've been through." "You're right," Mrs. Thompson agreed. "I don't. But I do know that anger like yours doesn't come from nowhere. It usually has a root." John glared at her, his fists clenching at his sides. "You think you know me? You don't know anything." "Maybe not," Mrs. Thompson conceded. "But I do know that holding on to anger only hurts you in the end." John opened his mouth to retort, but before he could speak, a young man nearby pulled out his phone and began recording the confrontation. "Hey, check this out," he whispered to his friend. "This guy's losing it on an old lady." The friend nodded, both of them watching with interest. John noticed the phone and felt a surge of irritation. "Put that away," he snapped. "This is none of your business." But it was too late. The video was already being uploaded to social media, and within minutes it began to spread. Comments and reactions poured in, with many expressing outrage at John's behavior. Back at home, John sat in his living room, scrolling through his phone. He came across the video, his own face twisted with anger, shouting at Mrs. Thompson. The comments were brutal, calling him a bully, a misogynist, a disgrace. He threw the phone down, running a hand through his hair. How had it come to this? How had he become the man in that video? His mind drifted back to his childhood, to a time when things were simpler. He remembered his mother, a stern woman who had always pushed him to succeed, to be the best. She had little patience for weakness, and John had learned early on that showing emotion was a sign of failure. As a teenager, he had struggled with relationships, never quite knowing how to connect with others. His first girlfriend had broken up with him, calling him cold and unfeeling. The pattern had continued into his adult life, with failed relationships and a growing resentment towards women who, in his mind, had always let him down. In the business world, John had found success, but it came at a cost. He had become known for his ruthless tactics, his willingness to do whatever it took to get ahead. He had no close friends, no family to speak of. His life was a series of transactions, devoid of genuine connection. Mrs. Thompson, on the other hand, had led a life filled with love and purpose. As a teacher, she had touched countless lives, guiding and nurturing her students with patience and care. She had raised a family, been an active member of her community, and continued to offer her wisdom to those around her. Despite her own hardships, including the loss of her husband and the challenges of aging, Mrs. Thompson remained a pillar of strength and kindness. She had never let bitterness take root in her heart. The next day, as John walked through the park, he spotted Mrs. Thompson sitting on the same bench. He hesitated, unsure of what to do. Part of him wanted to avoid her, to pretend the incident had never happened. But another part of him, a part he had long ignored, felt a pang of guilt. He approached her slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. "Mrs. Thompson," he began, his voice unsteady. I wanted to apologize for yesterday. I was out of line." Mrs. Thompson looked up at him, her expression softening. "Thank you, John," she said. "I appreciate that." John took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. "I don't know why I get so angry," he admitted. "It's like I can't control it." Mrs. Thompson nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "Anger often comes from pain," she said. "From wounds that haven't healed." John sat down on the bench beside her, feeling a strange sense of relief. "I don't know how to fix it," he confessed. "I don't know where to start." "Talking about it is a good first step," Mrs. Thompson said. "And seeking help if you need it?" John nodded slowly, realizing that she was right. He had spent so long burying his emotions, pretending they didn't exist. But they were there, festering beneath the surface, driving his anger and resentment. At first, the sessions were uncomfortable. John was not used to talking about his feelings, to admitting vulnerability. But slowly he began to open up, to explore the roots of his anger and resentment. He talked about his mother, her high expectations, and her lack of affection. He talked about his failed relationships, the women who had left him feeling inadequate and unloved. He talked about his career, the sacrifices he had made, and the emptiness he felt despite his success. Through it all, his therapist listened patiently, offering guidance and support. John began to see patterns in his behavior, to understand how his past had shaped his present. It was a painful process but also a liberating one. Meanwhile, Mrs. Thompson continued her daily routine, her interactions with the community unchanged. She received messages of support from neighbors and former students, all of whom admired her grace and resilience. One afternoon, as she sat on her bench, she noticed John approaching. He looked different, more relaxed, more at peace. He carried a bouquet of flowers, which he handed to her with a shy smile. "These are for you," he said. "As a thank you. For everything." Mrs. Thompson accepted the flowers, her eyes twinkling with warmth. "Thank you, John," she said. "That's very kind of you." They sat together talking about everything and nothing. John shared some of what he had been going through, his efforts to change, and the progress he was making. Mrs. Thompson listened, offering words of encouragement and wisdom. As the weeks turned into months, John continued to work on himself. He attended his therapy sessions regularly, joined a support group, and began to engage more with his community. He volunteered at local events, helped out at the community center, and even started mentoring young men who were struggling with their own issues. His relationship with Mrs. Thompson deepened, becoming one of mutual respect and friendship. They often met in the park, sharing stories and laughter. John found himself looking forward to these moments, grateful for the connection they had forged. The viral video, which had initially brought him so much shame, became a catalyst for his transformation. People in the community began to notice the change in him, and slowly the negative perceptions began to fade. John was no longer seen as the angry misogynist, but as a man who was trying to make amends, to become a better person. One day, John received a letter in the mail. It was from the young man who had recorded the video. He wrote about how he had been inspired by John's transformation, how it had made him reflect on his own behavior and attitudes. "I realized that I had my own issues to work on," the young man wrote. "Seeing you change gave me hope that I could change too." John read the letter with a sense of awe and gratitude. He had never imagined that his journey would have such an impact on others. It was a reminder of the power of redemption, of the ripple effect that one person's change could have on the world around them. As the year drew to a close, John decided to take a bold step. He had always been passionate about music, a love that had been buried under the weight of his ambitions. He had played the piano as a child, finding solace in the melodies and harmonies. He decided to buy an old music school that had been closed for years. It was located in the neighborhood where he had grown up, a place filled with memories. John poured his energy into restoring the school, turning it into a center for free music education for low-income children. The grand reopening of the school was a community event, filled with excitement and anticipation. Children and parents gathered, eager to see the transformation. John stood at the entrance, greeting guests with a smile that was genuine and warm. Mrs. Thompson was the guest of honor, and she took her place at the piano with grace and confidence. As she began to play, the room fell silent, the music filling the air with a sense of hope and possibility. John watched from the front row, his heart swelling with emotion. The notes of the melody seemed to speak directly to him, reminding him of how far he had come. He had found his way back to the music, back to himself. After the performance, Mrs. Thompson approached John, her eyes shining with pride. "You did it," she said. "You found your way." John nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you," he replied. "You showed me the way." They hugged, a moment of mutual recognition and understanding. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had led them to this moment of triumph and redemption. In the months that followed, John continued to balance his business responsibilities with his work at the music school. He gave piano lessons on weekends, rediscovering the joy of teaching and sharing his passion with others. The school flourished, becoming a beacon of hope for the community. Children who had never had the opportunity to learn music now had a place to explore their talents, to dream and create. John took pride in their achievements, knowing that he was making a difference. Mrs. Thompson remained a constant presence, her wisdom and kindness continuing to inspire those around her. She saw in John a man who had been transformed, not just by his own efforts, but by the power of connection and understanding. One evening, as John and Mrs. Thompson sat together in the park, she turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about the future, John?" she asked. John nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I do," he said. "I think about what I want to leave behind, the legacy I want to create." "And what is that?" Mrs. Thompson asked, her eyes filled with curiosity. "I want to be remembered for more than just my business success," John replied. "I want to be remembered for the lives I touched, the difference I made. I want to leave a legacy of kindness, of understanding." Mrs. Thompson smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "I believe you will," she said. "You've already started." As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the park, John felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. He had come a long way from the angry man who had shouted at an old woman. He had found a new purpose, a new way of being. And he knew that, with Mrs. Thompson by his side, he would continue to grow, to learn, and to make a difference. The journey was far from over, but he was ready for whatever lay ahead. In the final moments of the story, John reflects on the lessons he has learned. He understands that change is a continuous process, one that requires effort and commitment. He is grateful for the support he has received, for the people who have stood by him. He thinks about the impact of his actions, the way his transformation has inspired others. He knows that he has the power to create positive change, to be a force for good in the world. As he walks through the park, he sees a young man sitting on a bench, looking lost and troubled. John approaches him, offering a kind smile and a listening ear. "Hey there," John says gently. "You look like you could use someone to talk to." The young man looks up, surprised but grateful. "Yeah," he says. "I guess I could." John sits down beside him, ready to listen, ready to help. He knows that this is just the beginning, that there are many more people out there who need support, who need kindness. And he is ready to be that support, to offer that kindness. Because he has learned that the greatest success is not in accumulating wealth, but in reclaiming one's essence, in being true to oneself. As the story concludes, the viewer is left with a powerful message of hope and redemption. They are encouraged to reflect on their own lives, to consider the impact of their actions, and to strive for positive change. The call to action invites viewers to subscribe to the channel, to share their own experiences and reflections, and to join the community in promoting kindness and understanding. The story of John and Mrs. Thompson is a reminder that it is never too late to change, to grow, and to make a difference. It is a story of transformation, of the power of connection, and of the enduring impact of kindness. And with that, the script comes to a close, leaving the viewer with a sense of hope and inspiration. ready to take on their own journey of self-discovery and transformation. John's life had transformed in ways he had never imagined. The music school became a sanctuary for him, a place where he found solace and purpose. The children he taught brought a joy that was previously absent from his life. Each lesson was a reminder of the power of music to heal and connect. One Saturday morning, as John prepared for his piano class, he noticed a familiar face among the new students. It was the young man who had recorded the viral video. He approached John with a shy smile, holding a music sheet. "Hello, Mr. John," he said, his voice filled with a mix of nervousness and excitement. "I saw the video of Mrs. Thompson playing at the opening, and I realized I wanted to learn how to play the piano too." John's heart swelled with pride and a sense of fulfillment. "Welcome," he said warmly. "I'm glad you're here. Let's get started." As the lessons progressed, John found himself mentoring the young man, not just in music but in life. They talked about their struggles, their dreams, and the importance of kindness and understanding. The young man, whose name was Alex, became a regular at the music school, and their bond grew stronger with each passing day. One evening, after a particularly moving lesson, Alex stayed behind to talk to John. "You know," Alex began, "I never told you why I recorded that video. I was angry that day. Angry at the world, angry at myself. I thought capturing someone else's anger would make me feel better. But it didn't. It just made me realize how much I needed to change." John listened, feeling a deep connection to Alex's words. "I understand," he said. "Anger can be a powerful force, but it doesn't have to define us. We can choose to use it as a catalyst for change, just like you did." Alex nodded, his eyes reflecting a newfound determination. "Thank you, Mr. John. You've taught me more than just music. You've shown me the importance of compassion and self-reflection." Their conversation was a testament to the ripple effect of John's transformation. His journey had inspired others to look within themselves, to confront their own demons, and to strive for a better version of themselves. Meanwhile, Mrs. Thompson continued to be a guiding light in the community. Her wisdom and kindness were a source of comfort for many, and her influence extended far beyond the music school. She organized community events, supported local charities, and mentored young people, always with a gentle smile and a listening ear. One day, as she sat in her favorite spot in the park, a young woman approached her, holding a notebook. "Mrs. Thompson," she said hesitantly, "I was wondering if you could help me. I'm trying to write a book about the impact of kindness, and I think your story would be a perfect addition." Mrs. Thompson's eyes twinkled with interest. "I'd be honored," she replied. "Kindness has always been at the heart of everything I do. I'd love to share my experiences." As they talked, Mrs. Thompson shared stories of her teaching days, her interactions with the community, and the lessons she had learned along the way. The young woman, whose name was Emily, listened intently, taking notes and asking thoughtful questions. Their collaboration blossomed into a beautiful friendship, and Emily's book began to take shape. It was filled with stories of kindness, resilience, and the power of human connection. Mrs. Thompson's contributions were a highlight, her words resonating with readers and inspiring them to embrace compassion in their own lives. As the seasons changed, so did the lives of those touched by John and Mrs. Thompson. The music school flourished, becoming a hub of creativity and learning. The community grew stronger, united by a shared commitment to kindness and understanding. John's business also underwent a transformation. He implemented new policies that prioritized employee well-being and fostered a more inclusive and supportive work environment. His colleagues noticed the change in him, and many were inspired to follow his lead. One day, during a company meeting, John stood before his team, his heart full of gratitude and hope. "I want to thank each and every one of you," he said, his voice steady and sincere. "Your support and dedication have made this transformation possible. Together, we can create a workplace that values kindness, respect, and collaboration." The room erupted in applause, and John felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had come a long way from the man who had once shouted at an old woman in the park. He had found a new purpose, a new way of being, and he was determined to continue on this path. As the years passed, John and Mrs. Thompson's friendship remained a cornerstone of their lives. They continued to meet in the park, sharing stories, laughter, and the occasional tear. Their bond was a testament to the power of connection, the importance of understanding, and the enduring impact of kindness. One sunny afternoon, as they sat together on their favorite bench, Mrs. Thompson turned to John with a thoughtful expression. "You know, John," she said, "I've been thinking about the future. I'm not getting any younger, and there's still so much I want to do." John nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "What do you have in mind?" he asked. "I want to start a foundation, Mrs. Thompson replied. A foundation that promotes kindness and supports community initiatives. I want to leave a legacy that continues to inspire and uplift, even after I'm gone. John felt a surge of admiration for his dear friend. That's a wonderful idea, he said. I'd be honored to help you make it a reality. With John's support, Mrs. Thompson's vision began to take shape. They worked tirelessly to establish the foundation, securing funding and rallying community support. The foundation's mission was simple yet profound: to promote kindness, support local initiatives, and create opportunities for personal growth and development. The launch of the foundation was a grand event, attended by community members, local leaders, and supporters from near and far. Mrs. Thompson stood at the podium, her heart filled with gratitude and hope. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter, she said, her voice strong and clear. This foundation is a testament to the power of kindness, the strength of community, and the importance of understanding. Together, we can create a world where compassion and empathy are at the forefront of everything we do. The audience erupted in applause, and John felt a deep sense of pride and fulfillment. He had come a long way from the man who had once been consumed by anger and resentment. He had found a new purpose, a new way of being, and he was determined to continue on this path. As the foundation grew, so did its impact. It supported a wide range of initiatives, from educational programs to community events, all aimed at fostering kindness and understanding. The foundation became a beacon of hope, inspiring others to embrace compassion and make a difference in their own lives. John continued to balance his business responsibilities with his work at the foundation and the music school. He found joy in teaching, mentoring, and giving back to the community. His life was rich with purpose and connection, and he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Mrs. Thompson, too, continued to be a guiding light. Her wisdom and kindness touched countless lives, and her legacy lived on through the foundation. She saw in John a man who had been transformed, not just by his own efforts, but by the power of connection and understanding. One evening, as John and Mrs. Thompson sat together in the park, they reflected on their journey. "We've come a long way," John said, his voice filled with gratitude. "We have," Mrs. Thompson agreed, her eyes twinkling with warmth. "And there's still so much more to do." John nodded, feeling a deep sense of purpose. "I'm ready," he said. "Whatever the future holds, I'm ready." As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the park, John and Mrs. Thompson felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. They had found their way not just back to themselves but to each other. Their journey was far from over, but they were ready for whatever lay ahead. The story of John and Mrs. Thompson is a reminder that it is never too late to change, to grow, and to make a difference. It is a story of transformation, of the power of connection, and of the enduring impact of kindness. And with that, the script comes to a close, leaving the viewer with a sense of hope and inspiration, ready to take on their own journey of self-discovery and transformation. As the foundation continued to grow and flourish, John and Mrs. Thompson found themselves more deeply involved in the everyday workings of their community than ever before. Their efforts began to attract attention beyond their local area, drawing interest from neighboring towns and even the media. One day, a journalist from a prominent newspaper reached out to John, expressing interest in writing a feature story about the foundation and its impact. John agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to spread their message of kindness and community even further. The journalist, Sarah, visited the music school and the foundation's headquarters, spending time with John, Mrs. Thompson, and the many people whose lives had been touched by their work. She was struck by the genuine warmth and compassion that permeated every aspect of their efforts. During her interview with John, Sarah asked him about the turning point in his life. John hesitated for a moment, then decided to share the story of the viral video and his encounter with Mrs. Thompson. "It was a wake-up call," John explained. "Seeing myself through the eyes of others made me realize how far I had strayed from the person I wanted to be. Mrs. Thompson's kindness and wisdom helped me find my way back." Sarah listened intently, her eyes reflecting the depth of John's transformation. "It's incredible how one moment can change the course of a person's life," she said. "Your story is truly inspiring." John nodded, feeling a sense of gratitude for the journey he had taken. "It's not just my story," he said. "It's the story of everyone who has been a part of this journey. The foundation, the music school, the community, it's all interconnected." Sarah spent several days gathering stories and interviews, capturing the essence of the foundation's mission and the impact it had on the community. When the feature was published, it garnered widespread attention, bringing even more support and resources to their cause. With the increased visibility, John and Mrs. Thompson were able to expand their efforts. They launched new programs including workshops on emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, and community building. They also established partnerships with local schools and organizations, creating a network of support and collaboration. One of the most successful initiatives was a mentorship program, pairing young people with community leaders and professionals who could guide them in their personal and professional development. John took on several men's himself, finding fulfillment in helping them navigate their own challenges and aspirations. Among his men's was a young woman named Lisa, who had struggled with anger and resentment much like John had in his past. Through their conversations and piano lessons, John helped Lisa understand the roots of her emotions and find healthier ways to cope. "I used to think that anger was my only option," Lisa confided in John one day. "But you've shown me that there are other ways to deal with my feelings. I can choose to be kind, to be understanding." John smiled, feeling a deep sense of pride in Lisa's progress. "It's a journey," he said. "But you're not alone. We're all here to support each other." As the foundation's impact continued to grow, John and Mrs. Thompson were invited to speak at conferences and events, sharing their story and the lessons they had learned. Their message resonated with audiences, inspiring others to embrace kindness and make positive changes in their own communities. One such event was a national conference on community development, where John and Mrs. Thompson were keynote speakers. The conference brought together leaders, activists, and changemakers from across the country, all eager to learn from their experiences. As John took the stage, he felt a mix of nerves and excitement. He looked out at the audience, seeing faces filled with anticipation and hope. He began his speech by sharing his personal journey, the turning point that had led him to where he was today. "I was once a man consumed by anger and resentment," John said. "But through the kindness of one person I found my way back to myself. Mrs. Thompson showed me that it's never too late to change, to grow, and to make a difference." He spoke about the foundation, the music school, and the many lives that had been touched by their efforts. He emphasized the importance of community, of coming together to support and uplift one another. "Our greatest strength lies in our connections," John said. "When we choose kindness, when we choose to understand and support each other, we create a ripple effect that can transform entire communities." Mrs. Thompson followed with her own speech, sharing her wisdom and experiences. She spoke about the power of compassion, the importance of empathy, and the enduring impact of kindness. "Kindness is not a weakness," Mrs. Thompson said. "It is a strength that can heal wounds, bridge divides, and bring people together. It is the foundation upon which we can build a better world." The audience responded with a standing ovation, their applause echoing the profound impact of John and Mrs. Thompson's message. The conference was a resounding success, and their story continued to inspire and motivate others. Back in their community, John and Mrs. Thompson remained dedicated to their work. They continued to mentor, teach, and support those around them, always striving to create a positive and inclusive environment. One day, as they sat together in the park, Mrs. Thompson turned to John with a thoughtful expression. "You know, John," she said, "I've been thinking about the future. There's still so much more we can do." John nodded, feeling a sense of excitement and determination. "What do you have in mind?" he asked. "I want to create a scholarship program," Mrs. Thompson replied. "A program that provides opportunities for young people to pursue their dreams, whether it's in music, education, or any other field they're passionate about." John felt a surge of admiration for his dear friend. "That's a wonderful idea," he said. "Let's make it happen." With renewed energy and purpose, they set to work on the scholarship program. They reached out to local businesses, community leaders, and supporters, securing funding and resources. The program was designed to provide financial assistance, mentorship, and support to young people who demonstrated potential and passion. The launch of the scholarship program was a joyous occasion, attended by community members, students, and their families. John and Mrs. Thompson stood together, their hearts filled with pride and hope. "This scholarship program is a testament to the power of dreams," Mrs. Thompson said in her speech. "It is a reminder that with support and encouragement, anything is possible. We believe in you and we are here to help you achieve your goals." The first recipients of the scholarships were announced, their faces lighting up with excitement and gratitude. Among them was Lisa, who had come so far in her journey of self-discovery and growth. As she accepted her scholarship, Lisa turned to John with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for believing in me, for helping me find my way." John felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had made a difference in Lisa's life. "You're welcome," he said. "And remember, this is just the beginning. Keep striving, keep dreaming, and never give up." The scholarship program became a cornerstone of the foundation's efforts, providing countless young people with the opportunities and support they needed to pursue their dreams. It was a testament to the enduring impact of kindness and the power of community. As the years went by, John and Mrs. Thompson continued their work with unwavering dedication. They faced challenges and setbacks, but their commitment to their mission never wavered. They knew that their efforts were making a difference, one person at a time. One evening, as they sat together in the park, reflecting on their journey, Mrs. Thompson turned to John with a gentle smile. "We've come a long way," she said. "We have," John agreed, his heart filled with gratitude. "And there's still so much more to do." Mrs. Thompson nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "Together we can continue to make a difference. We can continue to spread kindness and create a better world." John felt a deep sense of purpose and fulfillment. He had found his way not just back to himself, but to a life filled with meaning and connection. He knew that the journey was far from over, but he was ready for whatever lay ahead. And so, the story of John and Mrs. Thompson continued, a testament to the power of transformation, the importance of kindness, and the enduring impact of human connection. Their legacy lived on through the foundation, the music school, and the countless lives they had touched. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the park, John and Mrs. Thompson felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. They had found their way not just back to themselves but to each other. Their journey was far from over, but they were ready for whatever lay ahead. The story of John and Mrs. Thompson is a reminder that it is never too late to change, to grow, and to make a difference. It is a story of transformation, of the power of connection, and of the enduring impact of kindness. And with that, the script comes to a close, leaving the viewer with a sense of hope and inspiration, ready to take on their own journey of self-discovery and transformation. As the years went by, the foundation's influence continued to spread, touching lives far beyond their local community. John and Mrs. Thompson became symbols of the power of redemption and the transformative impact of kindness. One day, John received an invitation to speak at an international conference on social change. The event was to be held in a major city, bringing together leaders, activists, and visionaries from around the world. John was honored and humbled by the invitation, seeing it as an opportunity to share their message on a global stage. He prepared meticulously for his speech, reflecting on his journey and the lessons he had learned. He wanted to convey the importance of empathy, the necessity of self-reflection, and the profound impact that one person's kindness can have on another. The conference was held in a grand auditorium, filled with thousands of attendees. John felt a mix of nerves and excitement as he took the stage, looking out at the sea of faces. He began his speech by recounting the pivotal moment that had changed his life, the day he shouted at Mrs. Thompson in the park. "I was once a man consumed by anger and resentment," John said, his voice steady and sincere. "But through the kindness of one person I found my way back to myself. Mrs. Thompson showed me that it's never too late to change, to grow, and to make a difference." He spoke about the foundation, the music school, and the many lives that had been touched by their efforts. He emphasized the importance of community, of coming together to support and uplift one another. "Our greatest strength lies in our connections," John said. "When we choose kindness, when we choose to understand and support each other, we create a ripple effect that can transform entire communities." The audience responded with enthusiastic applause, their faces reflecting the impact of John's words. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that their message was resonating with people from all walks of life. After the speech, John was approached by numerous attendees, each eager to share their own stories and experiences. Many were inspired by his journey, expressing their commitment to fostering kindness and understanding in their own communities. One of the attendees, a young woman named Maria, approached John with tears in her eyes. "Your story has given me hope," she said. "I've been struggling with anger and resentment for years, but hearing you speak has made me realize that I can change. I can choose a different path." John felt a deep connection to Maria's words, recognizing the pain and struggle she was experiencing. "You can change," he said gently. "It's a journey, but you're not alone. There are people who care about you, who want to support you. Don't be afraid to reach out and seek help." Maria nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "Thank you," she said. "I will." As the conference came to a close, John felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that their work was far from over, but he was inspired by the impact they were having and the potential for even greater change. Back at home, John and Mrs. Thompson continued their efforts with unwavering dedication. They expanded the foundation's programs, reaching more people and creating new opportunities for growth and development. One of their most ambitious projects was the creation of a community center, a place where people of all ages could come together to learn, connect, and support one another. The center offered a wide range of activities, from educational workshops to recreational programs, all aimed at fostering a sense of belonging and community. The grand opening of the community center was a joyous occasion, attended by hundreds of people from the neighborhood and beyond. John and Mrs. Thompson stood together, their hearts filled with pride and hope. "This community center is a testament to the power of connection," John said in his opening remarks. "It is a place where everyone is welcome, where everyone can find support and encouragement. Together we can create a stronger, more compassionate community." The center quickly became a hub of activity, filled with laughter, learning, and camaraderie. It was a place where people could come to find solace, to pursue their passions, and to build meaningful relationships. One afternoon, as John walked through the bustling halls of the community center, he noticed a familiar face. It was Alex, the young man who had recorded the viral video, now a dedicated volunteer at the center. "Hey, Mr. John," Alex greeted him with a smile. "I wanted to show you something." John followed Alex to one of the classrooms, where a group of children were gathered around a piano. Alex sat down at the piano and began to play, his fingers moving gracefully over the keys. The children watched in awe, their faces lighting up with excitement. "I've been teaching them," Alex said, his voice filled with pride. "Just like you taught me." John felt a surge of emotion, his heart swelling with gratitude and fulfillment. "You're doing an amazing job, Alex," he said. "I'm so proud of you." As the children clapped and cheered, John realized that the ripple effect of kindness was continuing to spread. The impact of their efforts was reaching new generations, inspiring others to embrace compassion and make a difference. Meanwhile, Mrs. Thompson continued to be a guiding light in the community. Her wisdom and kindness were a source of comfort and inspiration for many, and her legacy lived on through the foundation and the community center. One evening, as she sat in her favorite spot in the park, she was approached by a young couple holding a baby. "Mrs. Thompson," the young woman said, her voice filled with emotion, "we wanted to introduce you to our daughter. We named her Grace after you." Mrs. Thompson's eyes filled with tears as she held the baby in her arms. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling with gratitude. "This is the greatest honor I could ever receive." The young couple smiled, their hearts filled with admiration for the woman who had touched their lives in so many ways. "You've been such an inspiration to us," the young man said. "We wanted to honor your legacy by naming our daughter after you." Mrs. Thompson felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her impact would continue to be felt for generations to come. She had dedicated her life to kindness and compassion, and she was grateful for the opportunity to make a difference. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the park, Mrs. Thompson reflected on her journey. She had faced many challenges and hardships, but she had always remained true to her values, always striving to make the world a better place. She knew that her time was limited, but she felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. She had lived a life filled with purpose and connection, and she was ready for whatever lay ahead. One day, as John and Mrs. Thompson sat together in the park, they reflected on their journey. "We've come a long way," John said, his voice filled with gratitude. "We have," Mrs. Thompson agreed, her eyes twinkling with warmth. "And there's still so much more to do." John nodded, feeling a deep sense of purpose. "I'm ready," he said. "Whatever the future holds, I'm ready." As they sat in comfortable silence, the park around them bustling with life, they felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. They had found their way not just back to themselves but to each other. Their journey was far from over, but they were ready for whatever lay ahead. The story of John and Mrs. Thompson is a reminder that it is never too late to change, to grow, and to make a difference. It is a story of transformation, of the power of connection, and of the enduring impact of kindness. And with that, the script comes to a close, leaving the viewer with a sense of hope and inspiration, ready to take on their own journey of self-discovery and transformation. As the final credits roll, the audience is left with a powerful message, that every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the potential to create a ripple effect that can change the world. They are encouraged to reflect on their own actions, to consider the impact they have on others, and to strive for positive change in their own lives. The call to action invites viewers to subscribe to the channel, to share their own experiences and reflections, and to join the community in promoting kindness and understanding. Together, they can continue to spread the message of compassion and make a difference in the world. And so, the story of John and Mrs. Thompson lives on, a testament to the power of transformation, the importance of kindness, and the enduring impact of human connection. Their legacy is a beacon of hope, inspiring others to embrace compassion and make a difference in their own lives.